The 427th Annual Galactic Medical Conference was going exactly as you'd expect, boring enough to make a Xenian meditation monk snap from sheer tedium. That is, until Dr. Jack Patterson decided to casually destroy several thousand years of established xenobiological understanding in under 5 minutes. The day had started normally enough. Various beings from across the galaxy were scattered throughout the Grand Assembly Hall of New Singapore's Interstellar Convention Center, all pretending to be fascinated by a Varian doctor's 3-hour presentation on proper tentacle hygiene. Dr. Jack, just call me Patch. Patterson sat in the back row, feet propped up on an empty chair, catching up on his medical reports while occasionally tossing mints into his mouth with impressive accuracy. The human trauma surgeon hadn't even planned to attend this year's conference, but apparently being the first human to successfully reattach someone's arm while trapped in a malfunctioning elevator qualified as a groundbreaking medical achievement worthy of galactic recognition. Jack thought it just qualified as a Tuesday. Ambassador Clickstacks, the conference's chief organizer and leading authority on xenomedicine, stood at the podium, looking exactly like what would happen if you crossed a praying mantis with a peacock and then made it wear reading glasses. The ambassador was currently introducing the next speaker with all the enthusiasm of someone reading terms and conditions out loud. And now, we welcome Dr. Patterson of Earth to present his paper on. Clickstacks adjusted their glasses with one of their 4 upper appendages. Emergency trauma surgery in gravity-variable environments. Jack sauntered up to the podium, his characteristic grin firmly in place, the kind of grin that made nursing staff simultaneously trust his surgical abilities and want to check their coffee for salt. Thanks, Ambassador. So, funny story about that elevator surgery? Jack clicked to his first slide, showing a rather graphic before and after of the procedure. Several delegates immediately changed colors in ways that probably weren't healthy for their species. Now, the real challenge wasn't the actual reattachment. That was pretty straightforward. Clean the wound site, realign the vessels, get everything back where it belongs. The tricky part was keeping the patient's inflammation response under control while the new tissue growth kicked in. The conference hall went dead silent. Even the ambient hum of environmental systems seemed to pause. Ambassador Clickstacks's antennae twitched violently. I'm sorry, doctor, did you say * new tissue growth? Well, yeah, Jack shrugged, clicking to the next slide. Standard human healing process. Inflammation triggers tissue regeneration, new cells form, blood vessels rebuild themselves. Basic stuff, really, though I guess the zero-G environment did make the swelling a bit more interesting than usual. The ambassador's exoskeleton made a sound like cracking ice. Humans actively grow new organic material to repair damage. Yes. Jack looked around the room, suddenly aware that several delegates were either backing away from the podium or reaching for what he really hoped weren't weapons. Wait, how do * your species heal wounds? Through civilized methods. Clickstacks's voice had risen several octaves. Controlled cellular regeneration, synthetic tissue replacement, biomechanical repair. Not this barbaric process of forcing your bodies to spawn new flesh through aggravated trauma response. Jack scratched his head. So you're telling me you guys don't use inflammation as part of your healing process? No wonder your recovery times are so long. Speaking of which, you might want to get that twitching antenna checked out. Looks a bit inflamed. The ambassador let out a sound that could only be described as a squeak of pure terror, antennae now practically vibrating off their head. The conference hall erupted into chaos. Several delegates fainted, Others began rapid-fire emergency communications in their native languages. One particular individual, who appeared to be made primarily of floating crystals, actually shattered in distress. Jack stood at the podium, watching the pandemonium unfold with the bemused expression of someone who'd accidentally set off the fire alarm while making toast. He pulled out his phone and started typing. "Hey, Lynn, yeah, it's Jack. Remember how you said I couldn't possibly cause an interplanetary incident just by giving a medical presentation? Funny story about that." Exactly 4 hours after what was already being called the flesh-growing incident, an emergency meeting of the Galactic Medical Council convened in what was technically a janitor's closet. The actual conference rooms were still being decontaminated after several species had panic-molted. General Blur of the Galactic Defense Force took up approximately half the available space, their gelatinous form vibrating with barely contained anxiety. The general had specifically evolved to be unmistakably threatening, which made their current state of nervous jiggling somewhat counterproductive. "This is unprecedented," Blur's voice bubbled through their translator. "In all my years of maintaining galactic security, I've never encountered a species that just asterisk grows back." Ambassador Clickstacks, who had needed 3 doses of universal-grade calming agents to stop their antennae from twisting into pretzels, nodded vigorously. "According to Dr. Patterson's medical records, which I've had thoroughly analyzed, humans not only regenerate tissue, but they consider this process entirely normal asterisk. They even have a colloquial term for it: healing." "Barbaric," whispered a floating consciousness that had introduced itself as the head of xenobiology. "Our research indicates that when humans experience tissue damage, they respond by triggering an aggressive inflammatory response, flooding the area with specialized repair cells and literally forcing their bodies to manufacture replacement parts." "Like some kind of organic 3D printer," muttered another delegate, "but with more violence." General Blur's surface rippled in distress. "But how do they control it? What stops them from regenerating indefinitely, growing extra limbs, becoming immortal?" "That's the truly terrifying part," Clickstacks said, pulling up a holographic display of human medical data. "They asterisk don't control it. The process is entirely autonomous. Their bodies just decide to repair themselves without proper oversight or committee approval." The closet erupted into alarmed murmuring. A cleaning drone in the corner beeped in confusion. "And it gets worse," the ambassador continued. "According to these records, humans actually become stronger after certain types of damage. Their musculature adapts and reinforces itself. They call it exercise, but let's be clear. They're deliberately damaging themselves to trigger micro-regeneration events." General Blur's form lost several shades of translucency. "So you're telling me that not only can they regenerate, but they've weaponized the process. This is a clear threat to galactic security. We must take immediate action." Now," said the head of xenobiology, their consciousness flickering thoughtfully. "We must approach this scientifically. Perhaps we should establish a committee to study these humans, observe their regenerative capabilities, document their healing processes, all in the interest of galactic medicine, of course." Yes, purely scientific," General Blur agreed, though their surface tension suggested otherwise. "We'll need detailed observations, careful monitoring, perhaps some containment protocols just as a precaution." "I propose we start with Dr. Patterson," Clickstacks suggested. "He seems to be a typical specimen of their medical profession, though I must note his medical records indicate he once continued performing surgery despite having 3 broken fingers. He simply, and I quote, walked it off. The cleaning drone beeped again, this time in what sounded suspiciously like admiration. "Very well," General Blur declared, trying to reassume their threatening posture but mostly succeeding in looking like anxious jelly. "We'll establish the Committee for Human Medical Observation immediately. Remember, this is strictly scientific research. We're simply gathering data on their unusual biological processes." "Of course," agreed the head of xenobiology, "though perhaps we should requisition some containment fields and shock troops for, peer review purposes." "Naturally," Click-Stacks nodded. "We should also prepare emergency protocols in case they start regenerating uncontrollably. Does anyone know if humans can grow back their heads?" "Let's not find out," General Blur shuddered, causing several cleaning supplies to fall off nearby shelves. "Meeting adjourned, and someone please help me get out of this closet. I appear to have stress expanded." As the delegates squeezed past the now doorway-filling general, none of them noticed the small maintenance bot in the corner transmitting the entire conversation directly to Dr. Patterson's phone. The cleaning drone had, after all, been programmed by humans, and if there's one thing humans understood better than regenerating tissue, it was the value of good old-fashioned eavesdropping. The emergency department of New Singapore General Hospital was having what the staff liked to call a perfectly normal Tuesday apocalypse. 3 hovercar pileups, 1 malfunctioning artificial gravity generator, and a tourist who discovered the hard way that not all local street food was cross-species compatible. Dr. Jack Patterson moved through the chaos with the practiced ease of someone who'd long since accepted that normal was just a setting on the coffee maker. "Speaking of which, Lynn, please tell me that's the good stuff." Jack made grabby hands at the steaming cup being held by Nurse Lynn Band-Aid Rodriguez, who was simultaneously updating patient charts and fending off a malfunctioning medical drone with a clipboard. "Made with real Earth-imported beans and just enough sugar to give a diabetic nightmares," Lynn confirmed, expertly sliding the cup into Jack's waiting hands while smacking the drone with her clipboard. "Also, we've got observers. The alien kind or the medical student kind?" "Alien, 3 of them. They're trying to be subtle, but one's literally a floating blob of anxiety, and another keeps forgetting to maintain their holographic disguise. Pretty sure I saw antennae poking through their human hairdo." Jack took a long sip of coffee, savoring both the caffeine and the growing realization that his conference presentation had sparked exactly the kind of chaos he lived for. "How long have they been watching?" "Since morning shift change. They seemed particularly interested when you popped your dislocated thumb back in during the hovercar trauma cases." Lynn paused to review a chart. "By the way, you really should let someone else do that next time." "Hey, it's faster this way. Besides, did you see their faces when it made that clicking sound? The crystalline one nearly fractured." Jack grinned, then immediately had to dodge as the medical drone made another pass at his head. "Think we should give them a proper show." "Already ahead of you, boss." Lynn's smile would have made a shark proud. "I may have mentioned to the staff that we've got some very interested observers who'd love to learn about human medical practices. Everyone's been extra human today." As if on cue, Dr. Ramirez walked past, loudly discussing how he'd walked off a broken toe last week. In the background, an intern demonstrated their rapid healing factor by showing off a nearly healed paper cut to a very distressed-looking potted plant that was definitely not a disguised alien observer. "Did you see where they set up their main observation post?" Jack asked, already formulating what would probably qualify as a terrible idea. "Supply Closet B, disguised as a new inventory system. though why they thought a supply cabinet needed 18 antennae is beyond me. Perfect, that's right next to the break room. Time for a little coffee break demonstration. Lynn's grin widened. I'll grab the extra-strength coffee, the stuff that made Dr. Chen stay awake for 3 days straight. The next 15 minutes were a carefully orchestrated display of what the hospital staff had collectively decided to call typical human behavior. Jack and Lynn stationed themselves in the break room, within clear view of the suspiciously overcrowded supply closet. "You know," Jack said loudly, pouring himself a cup of what was essentially caffeine with a coffee chaser, "I'm really glad humans evolved this rapid healing response. Makes our job so much easier." "Oh, absolutely," Lynn agreed, matching his volume. "Remember that guy last week who came in with a fractured radius and just needed a cast and some inflammation encouragement? Classic case of enhanced tissue regeneration, though not as impressive as when I had to regrow those fingernails after the liquid nitrogen incident." A muffled squeak came from the supply closet. "Still," Jack continued, taking a deliberate sip of his nuclear-grade coffee, "nothing beats good old-fashioned cellular revival. I'm particularly proud of how quickly my fourth finger grew back after that unfortunate airlock incident." There was a loud thud from the closet, followed by what sounded like several bodies hitting the floor. "Should we tell them that last part was a lie?" Lynn whispered. "Nah, besides, watch this." Jack reached for the coffee pot again, making sure their audience had a clear view. "You know what really kicks our healing into high gear? This stuff, pure, concentrated cellular stimulant. We call it coffee, short for coefficient of flesh enhancement." The supply closet door burst open. General Blur, no longer bothering with any disguise, oozed out in a panic. "They have a regeneration enhancement serum. Code red, I repeat, code red." Click stacks, their human disguise now glitching to show both their actual form and what appeared to be a teenage pop star, stumbled after them. "The humans are weaponizing their healing capabilities. They're becoming unstoppable." The third observer, who had indeed been disguised as a potted plant, attempted to make a break for it but got tangled in their own decorative leaves. Jack took another casual sip of coffee, watching as the alien observers fled in panic, leaving behind enough surveillance equipment to stock a small spy shop. "Think we overdid it?" Lynn shrugged, already sending out a hospital-wide message to stand down from Operation Freak Out the Aliens. "Nah, though you might want to check your phone. Pretty sure I just saw General Blur sending out some kind of emergency alert." Jack pulled out his phone, read the incoming messages, and started laughing. "Oh, this is perfect. They're calling an emergency session of the Galactic Security Council. Apparently, we've been classified as a regenerating threat to galactic stability." "So what's the plan?" "Well," Jack finished his coffee with a flourish, "I'm thinking it's time to show them what humans are really capable of. Want to help me cause an interplanetary incident again?" "Always," Lynn grinned, "but this time I'm documenting everything. The group chat is never going to believe this." In retrospect, Jack probably should have expected the containment team. What he hadn't expected was their terrible timing, right in the middle of his attempt to break the hospital record for most consecutive mini marshmallows caught in his mouth. "Dr. Jack Patterson," announced a voice that managed to sound both terrified and threatening. "By order of the Galactic Security Council, you are to be contained for study of your dangerous regenerative capabilities." Jack slowly turned away from the vending machine, cheeks still stuffed with marshmallows, to find himself facing what appeared to be a SWAT team designed by someone who'd only ever seen sci-fi movies and had a particular fondness for tentacles. "MFFMM?" he asked eloquently before remembering to swallow. Sorry, bad timing. Could you come back in like 10 minutes? I'm only 3 marshmallows away from beating Dr. Chen's record. The lead containment officer, whose armor appeared to be designed specifically to withstand regenerating humans, despite no one actually knowing what that would entail, raised what might have been a weapon or might have been a very aggressive scanning device. Please do not resist. We are authorized to use anti-regeneration countermeasures. Those exist. No, but we really hoped you wouldn't know that. That's when Lynn burst through the door, wielding her clipboard like a shield of righteousness. Jack, the whole hospital's surrounded by... Oh, she took in the scene. I see you've met our new friends. Indeed. Jack nodded casually, reaching behind him to punch in another code on the vending machine. I was just explaining how I'm about to break the Marshmallow record, the one Dr. Chen set last year. That's the one, the record that led to the Great Sugar Rush incident of 2073. Exactly the one that we swore never to speak of again after what happened to the Gecko ward. Jack grinned. Want to help me recreate it? The containment team's leader made a sound that suggested their universal translator was struggling with the concept of pure exasperation. This is serious. You are a biological hazard. Your uncontrolled regenerative capabilities. Quick question, Lynn interrupted. Did anyone actually research human biology before planning this containment operation? Of course, we observed your kind extensively. We know all about your healing serum, your rapid tissue generation, your ability to regrow limbs. That last one was a joke, Jack pointed out. What? Yeah, we can't actually regrow limbs. That's why I had to reattach that guy's arm in the elevator. If we could regrow them, that would have been a way shorter surgery. There was a long pause as the containment team processed this information. But we saw you drinking the enhancement serum. The coffee, Lynn snorted. It's just bean juice. Makes us hyperactive and occasionally vibrate, but that's about it. Although, Jack added thoughtfully, I'm pretty sure the stuff in the break room could qualify as a chemical weapon under certain treaties. The containment team leader's armor made a distressed whirring sound. But the inflammation response, the autonomous healing, the exercise-induced adaptation. Yeah, that's all normal, Jack shrugged. Basic human biology. We're not special or dangerous. We just heal differently than you folks. Though I will say, watching you all panic about it has been the highlight of my year. But General Blur said... General Blur also thinks humans photosynthesize because someone once told them we need vitamin D from sunlight, Lynn pointed out. The containment team huddled together, having what appeared to be an intense whispered discussion about the embarrassing possibility that they'd mobilized an entire containment operation based on a misunderstanding and some very convincing lies about coffee. That's when Jack's earlier vending machine inputs finally processed, and the machine began dispensing its entire stock of Marshmallow packages all at once. Run, Lynn suggested. Run, Jack agreed. What followed was perhaps the most ridiculous chase scene in medical history. Jack and Lynn fled through the hospital corridors, leaving a trail of Marshmallow packets in their wake. The containment team followed, slipping and sliding on the scattered sweets, their impressive armor proving remarkably ineffective against small, squishy projectiles. They burst through the pediatric ward, where several children immediately joined in what they assumed was a new hospital game, pelting the aliens with stuffed animals. Through the rehabilitation center, where confused patients watched armored aliens trip over exercise equipment. Past the pharmacy, where Dr. Chen took one look at the chaos, muttered not again, and promptly hid under his desk. The chase finally ended in the cafeteria, where the containment team's leader slipped on a stray marshmallow and crashed into a table of Jell-O cups, creating what could only be described as a tactical dessert explosion. Jack and Lynn stood in the doorway, admiring the carnage. Think we should tell them that the real reason we heal through inflammation is just because it's the most efficient way our evolution figured out to deal with damage. Nah, Lynn grinned, recording everything on her phone. Let them keep thinking we're regenerating death machines. It's more fun this way. Fair point. Want to go explain to the hospital board why the cafeteria is covered in Jell-O and marshmallows again? Only if you explain why there's a containment team having an existential crisis in the pudding section. Deal, but first, Jack reached down, picked up an intact marshmallow package, and expertly caught 3 in his mouth at once. New record. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear General Blur demanding updates on the marshmallow-based human containment breach. It was, Jack decided, shaping up to be a perfectly normal Tuesday after all. The United Earth government's emergency response team had seen a lot of strange situations over the years. Alien first contact, standard procedure, interdimensional rifts, there's a form for that. But hospital chaos caused by a misunderstanding of basic human biology was definitely a new one for the filing system. Ambassador hell no, Martinez stood in the hospital conference room, pinching the bridge of her nose as she listened to Jack's explanation. Her signature expression, a look that had once made 3 different planetary councils apologize for existing, was in full force. "Let me get this straight," she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd read the incident report 3 times and still couldn't believe it. "You told them coffee was a regeneration serum." "In my defense," Jack replied, "they were already convinced we were some kind of self-repairing death machines. The coffee thing just seemed funny at the time. And the marshmallow incident, that was just good timing." Lynn, who'd been quietly adding to her viral video collection, raised her hand. "If it helps, the clip of the containment team sliding into the Jell-O has already gotten 6 million views on GalacTube." Ambassador Martinez's eye twitched. "It doesn't." That's when General Blur oozed into the room, followed by a very disheveled Ambassador Clickstacks, who appeared to be wearing what was left of their human disguise, mainly just a wig sitting askew on their antennae. "This is unprecedented," Blur bubbled indignantly. "The humans have weaponized their regenerative abilities and their food supplies." "The marshmallows were an accident," Jack pointed out. "Weaponized confectionery." Ambassador Martinez held up a hand, instantly silencing the room with the practiced ease of someone who regularly dealt with planetary diplomacy and had once won a starring contest with a hive mind. "Perhaps we should discuss this over dinner, somewhere neutral without marshmallows." And that's how they ended up at Taste of the Galaxy, New Singapore's premier multi-species restaurant, attempting to prevent an interplanetary incident over appetizers. "You see," Jack explained, gesturing with a breadstick, "human healing is really just basic biochemistry. When we get hurt, our bodies trigger inflammation to clean up the damage and start repairs. It's not regeneration, it's just aggressive home maintenance." "But the coffee," General Blur whispered, their form rippling with remembered terror, "is just a stimulant. Makes us more alert, sometimes jittery, occasionally leads to questionable decision-making, but that's about it." "Then explain the exercise adaptation phenomenon," Clickstacks demanded, antennae quivering. "You deliberately damage your muscle tissue to make it stronger." "Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit weird," Lynn admitted. But it's not like we're doing it to become invincible. Humans just adapt to stress, like how I've adapted to working emergency room holidays by developing an immunity to chaos. Ambassador Martinez, who had been quietly radiating diplomatic disapproval throughout the entire conversation, finally spoke up. Perhaps a demonstration would help clear things up. "Oh no," said Jack immediately, recognizing her tone as the same one Lynn used right before suggesting something terrible. "Oh yes," Martinez smiled. "Dr. Patterson, would you mind getting a small paper cut? Show our guests the terrifying human healing process up close." The alien delegates recoiled in horror. "You want him to deliberately injure himself?" Clickstacks's translator glitched with shock. "In public, without proper medical oversight or committee approval." "It's just a paper cut," Jack shrugged, reaching for a menu. "Barely even counts as an injury." What followed was perhaps the most dramatic paper cut in galactic history. As Jack ran the menu edge across his finger, General Blur shifted through 7 different colors of translucency. Clickstacks's antennae tied themselves into a knot, and 3 other diners fainted. "See," Jack held up his finger, showing the tiny cut. "Now we just wait a few days and it'll heal completely. No regeneration serum needed." But General Blur's surface tension was reaching critical levels. "The inflammation, it's starting already. The human flesh is asterisk angry." "That's just the immune response," Lynn explained, trying not to laugh. "Completely normal, though I have to admit, angry flesh would make a great band name." "So you're saying," Clickstacks began slowly, "that humans don't actually have supernatural healing abilities?" "Nope. And the coffee isn't an enhancement serum. Just tastes good and keeps us awake. And the marshmallow incident? Pure chaos and good timing," Jack grinned, "though I did break the record." Ambassador Martinez cleared her throat. "So, can we all agree this has been a simple misunderstanding, one that definitely doesn't require any containment protocols or emergency council sessions?" The alien delegates huddled together, whispering furiously. Finally, General Blur turned back, trying to regain their threatening posture, but mostly succeeding in looking like embarrassed jello. "We may have overreacted slightly." Martinez agreed dryly, though, Clickstacks added, antennae finally unknotting themselves. "You must admit that growing new tissue through controlled inflammation is rather unusual. Says the species that can photosynthesize their own bandages," Lynn muttered. Just then, Jack's phone buzzed. He looked at it and started laughing. "Oh, this is perfect. The video of the Jell-O incident just got picked up by the Galactic News Network. They're calling it the Great Human Containment Catastrophe of 2074. General Blur made a sound like a deflating balloon. "Perhaps we should discuss terms for keeping this quiet." Ambassador Martinez's smile would have made a shark check its insurance policy. "Oh, I think we can work something out. But first, who's ready for dessert? I hear they serve excellent Jell-O." The resulting diplomatic screech could be heard 3 star systems away. The Galactic Assembly Hall was packed, not just regular packed, but someone told the Hive Mind Collective there would be free snacks packed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had drawn representatives from every spacefaring species, all eager to witness what the news networks were calling the Great Human Healing Hysteria. Dr. Jack Patterson stood at the podium, looking remarkably calm for someone who'd accidentally sparked an interstellar panic over basic biology. Lynn sat in the front row, still recording everything because, as she put it, some things deserve to be preserved for future generations to laugh at. Distinguished delegates, Jack began, doing his best to channel Ambassador Martinez's diplomatic tone rather than his usual emergency room snark. I'm here to explain why humans aren't actually terrifying, regenerating death machines, though I have to admit, that would make a great movie title. A nervous titter ran through the crowd.